Hello and welcome to Wired for Wellbeing, podcast sponsored by the Viva event. My name is Sue Coltman and I'm here today with my co-founder of the Viva event, Sheila Massand.
And we're also here with our wonderful Viva friend and collaborator and fun, Mr. Ian Watson. So Ian has been with us for at the Viva event for many years, from the beginning, actually, from the inception in 2015. What we love about, one of the things we love about Ian is his lifelong passion in the field of wellbeing. He has dedicated, or I don't think he even chose it, I think it chose him from what I've heard, the career path, his profession of firstly falling into being a homeopath, teaching homeopathy, holistic healing, and came across something called the Three Principles back in 2011 and sort of changed his focus. But everything, as far as we can tell and we know, has been about healing, personal transformation and well-being. So we're delighted to have Ian here with us today, and we're going to have a conversation. We'll probably be doing less talking than Ian. That's the idea. So Ian, welcome to Wired for Wellbeing.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And I get to talk about one of my favorite topics. So that's good.
Yeah, you certainly do. So we thought a great place to begin would be by asking you, we've given this title, the podcast is called Wired for Wellbeing. And we know what we mean by that. And we'd love you to share with our listeners and with us too, what your definition is of well-being.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give it a go. I would caveat it by saying I don't think this is going to be definitive definition, because I'm not sure we can pin it down in that way. To me, that the term well-being is used in the same way that we use the term stress. It's kind of a generic term these days, and a lot of times we use the term without even really thinking about what we mean by it necessarily. And if you look it up in dictionaries and so on, it's not that helpful because they don't all say the same thing either. So I've been on a journey of kind of grappling with, well, what do we mean by this, and what is it actually about? I think people's general understanding when they hear that term is that it's something to do with being at ease within yourself, or being relaxed, or not being stressed, or something like that. Most people, I think, have a sense that it's a possibility. And that's interesting to me, is that when any of us feel that we're not necessarily at our best, we're feeling a bit off, we're feeling out of sorts, I've noticed that everyone has the sense, at least, that they could feel better, that there's a better feeling available. And I think there's a clue in that. To me, what that points to is something that we come to understand through the three principles, which is that well-being is actually available to everybody under all circumstances, in any kind of condition, no matter what psychological or emotional state they happen to be in. And we often use the term innate well-being to kind of reinforce that. And that's often a new way of thinking about it already for a lot of people. Because if someone's been struggling for a long time, particularly if they've maybe been given a diagnosis and they've been told that there's something wrong with you, or something that you're just going to have to learn to manage, learn to live with, it kind of implies that to that person, at least, that their well-being has either been lost, or they've lost access to it altogether, or that it's been in some way compromised. I used to have plenty of well-being, but I don't seem to have so much these days. And when you do a comparative study, you look at other people relative to yourself, it would be easy to draw that conclusion. This person seems to enjoy a lot more well-being than I do. And one of the things about it that is kind of paradoxical in some sense is that when you notice that, if you try to improve your well-being by any kind of technique or process or working on yourself, very often it seems to have the opposite effect. What I've noticed happens then is a person just goes on a kind of endless path of striving and trying to fix themselves and trying one thing after another, and often getting quite bogged down and quite exhausted by that process, which is unfortunate because the idea is right. They kind of know that it's possible, but the very act of striving to achieve it is often counterproductive. So I think one of the great things about three principles understanding to me is that it not only helps us to understand in a deeper way what well-being is really, what it really is and isn't, but it also helps us to understand why it has that elusive quality. Yeah, people can they can get a sense that, yeah, that makes sense to me, that my well-being hasn't really gone anywhere, it's still intact, but how come I'm not feeling it? How come it seems to go out the window very easily, and then it takes me a long time to get back to it? And how come the things that I do to make myself feel better don't always work? These are quite valid questions that people will raise when, if you talk about well-being as being innate and everyone having it, they say, well, it's not my experience. My experience is that it comes and goes. So I think when I talk about well-being, particularly with people who are new to this understanding, I still like that to be the starting point. I often drop that in as a kind of depth charge initially. I say, look, everyone in this room and everyone has what we call innate well-being available on the inside. The fact that you might not be experiencing it right now, or may not have experienced it for some time, doesn't contradict that there's a reason for that, which we're going to understand. These principles are going to help you understand how it could be that your well-being is fully intact, it's always 100%, but your experience of it isn't. Your experience of it varies. So it's when those two factors are kind of taken into account in relationship to each other, what I've seen is that that's when it kind of makes sense to people. It's like, oh, okay, that's good to know. I'm not as broken as I thought I was. And I haven't actually lost what I thought I might have lost. There's just a way in which it gets covered up, and then it seems to be inaccessible to me temporarily. So, and for me, that even as someone who'd worked, as you say, I'd worked in this field for about 25 years, initially as a homeopath and interested in all different forms of holistic healing. And then about another 9 years following my homeopathic career, looking specifically in the direction of mental and emotional health. I'd never come across this before, this notion that actually well-being is built into the very fabric of life itself. And therefore it's like it's a done deal. It's not anything that we need to or even can work on or develop. The whole idea of developing something that's already built in and intact is kind of ludicrous once you understand that. But that was new to me. I hadn't heard that I hadn't come across that in any of the other things that I'd studied. So that caught my attention. And I didn't just take it as a fact straight off. I kind of looked at it as an open question. Is that really true? Is that possible? Let's run the experiment and see. And I would say that it's an ongoing experiment for me, but all I've seen since then in the last 14 or so years has just confirmed the truth of that over and over and more deeply. So for me, the game changer was when I came to see that most of the things that early on in my career of sharing the principles, I got invited to work in the corporate setting with my colleague Elizabeth Lovius. And that was interesting because I learned that a lot of companies have what they call well-being programs. And also in schools, I've taught this understanding in schools, and a lot of schools now have well-being days and things of this kind for the pupils. My son's former school had one a couple of years ago. He said, we're having a well-being day. It's for mental health. I said, that's great. What are they going to be talking about? He says, oh, I'm not sure. I'll find out. So he went and asked the question. And he came back and he said, in the morning, it's all about anxiety and depression. And in the afternoon, we're talking about suicidal thoughts. And I thought, well, that's great, but where's the well-being in all of this? And that was just so revealing to me in terms of where we look, like the direction we're looking. So that was, on the one hand, that was kind of puzzling in some sense, but it was also quite revealing. Thinking about my work in the corporate space, when the people were saying, we've got a well-being day coming up. Well, what are you doing on the well-being day? Oh, we have a massage therapist coming in. We're going to the spa. Maybe we're going to do some yoga. There's a mindfulness teacher teaching us some meditation. Typically, it was those kind of things. And what I kind of heard in that is that it's almost like it's treated as an add-on, or it's treated as something that you can be really stressed at work, but if you take a half hour out to do this, whatever this is, then somehow that's going to enhance and promote your well-being. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. Obviously, it's good to take a little time out and do something nurturing, but I kind of felt this was a superficial level of understanding of what well-being was really about. And for me, the game changer was when I came to see that well-being is not, it's not a variable. It's not something which some people have more of, some people have less of, or that a person can lose due to trauma or due to events that have happened or due to their current life circumstance. That actually well-being is a constant no matter what. That when I saw that, that was a kind of insight that I had around well-being. And it just explained so much to me. It helped me to understand why a lot of the research around well-being is actually quite misleading, because it's based on the assumption that if we do X, Y, and Z, a person's well-being will improve. And if these conditions are not in place and not met, a person's well-being will probably go down, right? So it's what we would call an outside-in approach to well-being, which is just based on a misunderstanding. And when I suddenly saw, it's like, oh no, what if we approached it as if well-being's a constant? And the only reason that people are not experiencing it is because, well, we live in a thought-created experience. And thought is a fluctuating variable, unlike well-being. If well-being is the constant, thought is the variable. Therefore, what we're feeling in any given moment is going to be subject to those fluctuations of thought. Sometimes it's going to kind of harmonize with our well-being more or less, and we're going to feel that. But there's often times when it won't. So that to me was, once I kind of saw how those two pieces sit together, I think it got me in what I would call right relationship to the whole well-being piece. It's like, okay, now I can speak to it. And what I learned about well-being is that if we speak to the well-being in someone, even someone who doesn't recognize it within themselves, it kind of evokes the well-being in them. It responds. That's what I've learned. And if we have eyes for the well-being responds. And that to me, that's the living proof that it is in everyone, is that it kind of wakes up when if we treat it as if it's there, if we act as if, and we're patient with ourselves and with the other person, it does wake up and it does respond, and it feels like a recognition for the person. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this, I know this is familiar to me. It's not anything new. When people reconnect to that well-being which they might not have had access to for a while, it's like a coming home to something that is deeply familiar. It's not a new thing they've never experienced before. So again, to me, that all confirms that it was there all along. It never went anywhere. It can never go anywhere. We don't have to do anything to enhance it. All that we have to do is to understand what obscures it temporarily. And the deeper we understand that, the less that obscuring power seems to have of thought. It still happens from time to time, but we can kind of see through it. We can sort of see through the illusion of that. We can know that we're okay even when we're not feeling okay. And to me, that's what pointing people back to the well-being is really all about.
That's wonderful. Thank you. It brought to mind the idea that once you take the weight of responsibility off a person to start with at the very beginning, it's like giving someone an image of, well, there's this beautiful system and it's called a lock. And all you've been missing is a key. And actually it's a system. It's not you. Here's a system and you'll be fine because you already are, but you haven't got the key. And
isn't that wonderful? And
yeah.
What I love about that, Sue, is that when we present it in that way, which to me is entirely accurate, it's what we're saying is it's learnable. Anyone can learn this. Anyone has the capacity to learn this, and we're starting from that premise, which is just something that you didn't know, that no one taught you. Right? I didn't know it either. Nobody taught me. I was just lucky to stumble upon it. You can too. So there's something really hopeful about that, and no one's kind of excluded. You know, everyone has the potential to learn it, which I think is beautiful.
Even children, as you said before.
Well, yeah, not that they need to do much learning.
They're quicker, aren't they?
They're quicker and they're much closer to the experience of living in their well-being than most adults, I would say. Purely because they don't yet have such an accumulation of habitual thought, which is the only thing that obscures our experience of well-being. So as more and more thought becomes habitual and becomes what we call conditioned thought, where we're just kind of living out of learned experience and other people's ideas and so on and so forth. That is the obscuring part of the role that thought plays. And that's what seems to erode away our sense of well-being. Now, it hasn't really eroded it away, but it just makes it less accessible in the moment.
So if somebody, I mean, I love what you've shared so far, and it's so clear, and from my ears and my understanding, it feels really simple as well. And for our listeners, if somebody's sitting there going, yeah, all sounds too simple to me, all sounds too easy, you're making it sound really easy, but I'm really struggling here, and you know, I've had this anxiety for 25 years, you don't understand. So how would you address, or how would you speak to somebody who was coming to you with that and saying, look, I hear what you're saying, but this anxiety, that's not going to work?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say I get it. I can well understand that it would look kind of a bit far-fetched, you know, if what I'm saying is actually true, that you still have well-being, even though your daily life experience has been one of being anxious or stressed for days, weeks, months, and years, then it can sound like a bit of a leap. So what I would say to people is like, okay, that's okay. I'm not asking you to believe me. That's the first thing I would say. This is something just to get curious about and to test it out, kind of run the experiment if you're willing, and just get curious about it. Because the only way that I know that any of us can learn this in a way that's helpful, we have to learn it by actually seeing it, by actually realizing it for ourselves. So I would just invite a person into to see whether they're willing to get curious and just explore it with me. And I would reassure them that I'm not trying to convince or persuade anybody, because it's not helpful. You know, it's not helpful to have someone tell you, like, oh, you know, you can feel better than this. I mean, probably they've had lots of advice like that already. You know, people offering helpful suggestions. We do that naturally as humans. So to me, it's in a different category. I would just try to help the person to see that there's certain things that we do learn, let's say at school and at college and so forth. But there's one thing that most of us don't learn, either in our childhood or through our education, and that has to do with how our own mind works in the creation of our own emotional and psychological experience. There's certain things about that unless we happen to stumble into it and follow our interest, we just wouldn't know. So we're kind of walking around with this wonderful system that we've been gifted with, and yet where's the manual? You know, no one really sat down and explained to us, this is how a feeling of anxiety, let's say, actually gets created. There's a way you can understand that, which is really helpful to know. If you don't understand it, when you get those thoughts and feelings, it's probably going to be quite distressing and it's going to be quite frightening. If you do understand it, you might get the same thoughts and feelings, but you won't be so distressed. How does that sound? Right? I can't guarantee you won't have them, because it's quite likely you're in the human experience. I still have anxious thoughts and feelings from time to time. But what I've learned is that you can have them without them having you to the same degree, without you being so distressed and bothered by that. Does that sound like that might be something you'd be interested in? And really, that's, you know, to me, that's the nature of the conversation. Is I'm just looking for what step the person sees they might be able to take that's doable for them initially, and to find out, to try and meet them there, rather than to expect them to take a big leap to where I'm sitting. I'm going to join them where they are initially and say, yeah, I get it. I know that you're up against it and it looks really tricky and probably looks like it's going to take a long time for you to feel any different. And I understand that. But if we can just explore it together through your own insight, you're going to notice if anything shifts around that. Yeah. It's not going to be anything that I tell you. It's going to be what you see, what you realize for yourself. And there's nothing in this understanding. It doesn't require anything of you other than that, just to kind of listen with an open mind as best you can. So it's not going to require you to do difficult practices, or you don't have to stand on your head or meditate on a full moon or anything like that. You can carry on with your normal life. It's just, we're just going to have a conversation and hang out together and see if you can see something. Would you be interested? Yes or no?
That seems to relate to what you said right at the beginning about it seems to be a common factor that we have a sense that there is something there and we just can't get to it. And I think that if I'd certainly say, oh yes, please, Mr. Watson, can I sign up? And that's just such a beautiful invitation.
Yeah, but not everybody does. And
No.
I think that's fair enough. But
Yeah.
But to your point, Sue, one of the opening things that I might talk about to the person relevant to what you just said, I might share with the person that something that I've noticed is that every single human being has the ability to recognize what's true for them when they hear it.
Yeah.
Everybody, without exception. And I might ask the person to reflect on that and tell me whether that's true in their experience. Right. And if they say yes, that's the confirmation, right? Because they hear it's like, oh yeah, now you mention it, there are things that I've come across and I've kind of known that that's right for me, that's true for me. So to me, what I'm inviting them to do is to use that as the measure, not to take my word for it or anything else, but say, okay, well, given that already, you've had that experience already of coming across certain things that just resonate for you, that just ring true, it just feels right to you. Do you think if we had a chat, you'd be able to recognize anything that was in that category? Chances are they would.
Fabulous.
So I would like to just maybe change, I don't know if it's changing gear or not, but as somebody who's very interested in the mind-body connection, I wondered if you could, just because for me that's all part of the well-being, the mind-body, it's not, and spiritual as well, mind-body spiritual connection. Would you speak to that a little bit from your perspective, how you see that through the lens of the three principles?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I think one of the things that we constantly run into is the limitations of language here, because even when we use terms like mind and body, there's an implied idea that there's two different things. And what I've come to see for myself, at least, is that they're never separate. We just separate them in our language, in the same way as we separate thought and feeling in our language. They're never separate either. So for me, that's already a helpful thing to consider. If you consider that mind body is one totality, they're always operating in unison, and the only way that we can know what's happening in our mind is through the body, is through what we actually experience through our felt sense. And therefore the body, it could be said that the feeling state that we're in acts as a kind of reflecting mirror, or I think Sydney Banks called it like a barometer. It's a barometer of our state of mind at any given moment, and it's giving us an accurate readout. If we see it in that light at any moment, if we can't necessarily see the thought that's arising in our consciousness because it's changing so quickly, and most of it's happening behind the scenes of our conscious awareness, but at any given moment we can check in and notice what we're feeling, how we're feeling. So the feeling won't tell us exactly the content of what we're thinking, but it will tell us the flavor. It will give us a kind of qualitative idea if I'm in an anxious state of mind or worrisome state of mind, or if I'm feeling down and gloomy and depressed and pessimistic. My feeling state is going to reflect that 100% of the time in an accurate way. So that, to me, is one of the things that the principles understanding brings to this whole mind-body business, which is just super helpful, because from that perspective, there's no such thing as a bad feeling. To me, anyway, there's not even such a thing as a negative feeling anymore. There's just feeling feedback, and it's all feedback. and you could say it's all good in that sense. It's better to know what's going on than not to know. So once you have that perspective on it, all of your felt experience becomes intelligent feedback, and it becomes something that you can use for your learning and for your growth. And it also helps to alert you when you're kind of losing sight of what you know to be true, when you're following something in thought which is probably erroneous. It's probably not true, but it might feel like it's important or necessary or urgent, or, you know, oftentimes our thinking has a feeling to it, which, because of the intensity of the feeling, we start believing the validity of the thought that's behind it. But once you understand that actually when the feeling that we're in is what I would say is what's most natural to us, what we experience is not a stress, it's not distress. What we experience is a feeling of ease, of being in the flow, feeling of contentment, a feeling of relaxation, joy, happiness, love, compassion, fulfillment, like all the good stuff, all the kind of feeling states that we are going through life looking to enjoy more of. It seems to me that that's all built into us. That's all under the umbrella of what I would call innate well-being. So our physiology, curiously enough, our physiology is optimized for well-being. It actually functions best when we're in alignment with our true nature, which is our true nature seems to me to be well-being. It seems to be love. It seems to be compassion and kindness. And the closer we are to being in harmony with that, the better our physiology seems to work. Isn't that cool? To me, that's amazing. It's an amazing fact. And it's demonstrated in things like homeopathy, which I practiced for many years. Homeopathy works by resonance phenomena. It's like the remedy that we give in homeopathy has to match the frequency, if you like, of the individual at a given time. If it doesn't match, it just kind of goes straight past them. It doesn't do anything for them. But if it's a good match, it acts like a reminder for the body mind's own intelligence to come back into harmony. Some people might have heard of muscle testing. Kinesiology works in the same way. We're actually using the feedback from the body mind to confirm whether this is something that's helpful and good for the person or whether it isn't. And their own system is revealing the answer, is revealing the truth. It also explains how lie detectors work, because a lie detector actually detects a stress response in our physiology. So to me, that's so interesting that our body mind doesn't seem to like it when we tell lies, even whether it's to ourselves or to somebody else. It actually creates distress on a subtle level, with skin resistance changes and our perspiration rate increases and heart rate changes ever so slightly, all indicative of the fact that it's actually stressful for us when we deviate from what's true. So to me, it's a beautiful thing to realize that this mind-body system is optimized for what's true. It's optimized for reality, let's say. And the more that we discover who and what we are truly on the inside and live in accordance with that, first of all, the less stressful life feels. We experience more life being in flow and being an experience that is more joyous and more enjoyable, more fulfilling. But second of all, it takes much less of a toll on the physical form. So we know now that I was reading some figures the other day on, this is in the UK, on the numbers of people who are out of work who could be working. You know, many of whom want to be working, but they can't because they're off sick. And on the mental and emotional health side, the main reason is there's two: anxiety and depression. So again, you could put both of those under the general heading of stress. People will say that I'm just feeling too stressed, I can't really cope anymore. So that's the biggest category on the mental emotional health. The biggest category on the physical health side is back and neck problems. And this is people who typically, it's like they feel like they have a slipped disc, or they get a neck spasm, or they get a sciatica, and they go to the osteopath and the chiropractor and they put it right. But they also say, you know, it's probably stress related. So you're probably going to need to come back next week or next month, which sure enough, many of those people do. So both categories are the same thing. Basically, one has just been reflected more through the physical form. The other one is just being described as an emotional experience. But this is you could say the modern plague. This is endemic amongst the adult population, and not just of the UK, I'm sure. And so many people have become normalized to that now, to thinking that it's normal to have, you know, your muscles going into spasm and your back playing up and migraines due to tension in the neck, and all of these things have become so commonplace And yet, to me, this is all just, again, it's intelligent feedback from the body, signaling the fact that we've been habitually using our mind in a way which is not conducive to health. This is what Sydney Banks beautifully called the innocent misuse of the gift of thought. And it's innocent because we're not doing it deliberately. We don't intend to create suffering that way. But when we don't understand how this system works, we are liable to use it against ourselves, at least some of the time.
So are you really pointing to the same, let's say the word solution? I know it's possibly not the best word to use, but so for a body issue, you know, a physical issue, or something that's described as anxiety, and we're looking to have a greater clarity of understanding, a deepening of understanding about the system and how we can get in the way. And when we get in the way, it could result in either of those fields, you know, the body or the mind. And so leading on from that, so in effect, there's still nothing to do except to notice and to understand and allow the body the space, the time, whatever words, to heal. Because really it's healing in both factors, isn't it? In both spheres.
That's right. And again, the healing piece, we don't need to worry about because it's built in.
Yeah.
So it's built into the life force intelligence. It knows how to heal. We don't know how to do healing, but the life force intelligence does. So the only reason we're not self-healing is because we're actively doing something that's getting in the way of that. Again, innocently, not deliberately, through the misunderstanding of how the mind works. So yeah, that's really all it is. So it's like, as we correct that misunderstanding for ourselves, we start to kind of see a bit more clearly. And each person has to see this for themselves. But anyone who starts to kind of cotton onto it is like, oh, okay, now I see. Yeah, I can really start to join the dots. I can see that what I thought was a stress that was being caused by my work or by my boss or by my financial situation, or actually that's a factor in my life, but it doesn't have the ability in and of itself to create stressful feelings in me. And that's the piece that we're helping people to discover, what Sydney Banks called the missing link, is understanding the role of thought in the creation of one's own experience. Once a person starts to get a glimpse of that, already something starts to change for them. Some of the habitual thinking will start to clear. It's almost like the fog starts to clear, at least a little bit. They start to get a glimpse of the fact that, oh, okay, I'm actually participating in the self-creation of these stressful feelings. Who knew? And once a person sees that, guess what happens? It stops making sense to keep creating it in that way. You start to see, oh, what if I didn't do that so much? So this is the opposite of stress management in some sense. We're not encouraging people to generate stress and then have a tool to manage it afterwards. What we're helping them to do is to go further upstream and to see how it gets created at source. Because if they understand that, they're going to have less of it being generated in the first place. So then there's less to manage, as you say, less to do.
More of that, please. I say, less to do.
Well, yeah, less is more in that sense.
Yes.
Exactly. Do you know, we could probably go for hours and hours with you, Ian. And we're not going to, because we want to keep these podcasts to more or less half an hour. So we're really, really grateful for your time and your wisdom, for sure. And your years of, you know, I'm just always blown away by how you can just speak it so easily and it flows. But that's from your years and years of experience, your years and years of experiments.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. And
looking.
it's an ongoing exploration, as you know, for me and
Yeah.
for all of us. But it's something that I love exploring and sharing with people. So thanks for the
Likewise.
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're really looking forward to having you at Viva again this year. 1st to the 3rd of November 2025, we're in this year. You'll find us at thevivaevent.com. And where can people find you, Ian, if they wanted to find out
Yeah,
about you?
thank you. The easiest place is my website, which is theinsightspace.com.
We'll put that in the show notes for sure, so people can find you.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much.
Yes.
And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Ian.
Bye. Bye for now.
Bye.